Welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. John the Son of Thunder here with Ryan the Retrograde. Now, 6 months ago, whenever all the virus nonsense went down, we were the first to bring you our predictions. Well, maybe not, but we brought you our predictions, and we're going to go over our predictions and see how accurate we were.
6 months later, I
Ryan
still have the same piece of paper.
So do you want to go ahead and get started with your first prediction?
Yeah, I'll just make my first remarks here is that remember everybody said we were going to die and they had to cancel the Mass. And that's when I began to smell a rotten fish somewhere, and I said, well, wait a minute. If the churches have to close and the Mass has to close, how come that's dangerous, but going to Walmart and the grocery store is not dangerous? Those places are allowed to stay open. And remember, this was before anybody even invented masks. Nobody was wearing masks in March. It wasn't until, what was it, like June or something, May, when the mask came in? I thought it was maybe June.
Yeah, well, the requirements were different by
states, yeah.
But I think they all came in about the same time.
About the same time. So they said everybody's going to die, we're all going to die, and of course we said that's bogus. But, so we were, of course, we were correct about that, and hardly anybody's died, nobody's getting sick. We know people who have had the virus. I mean, they get a cough or whatever, but of course YouTube will censor this because we're not allowed to talk about this. And you'll never get your monetization will be canceled even before it starts. You're gonna have to cut this out because they will demonetize you for sure.
Dang, with that auto like the closed caption automatic reading.
Yeah. Catch it. Well, anyway,
keywords.
Here's my going through my list of predictions. I have a note here. It says schools closed. That means no more liberal indoctrination. Everybody will be homeschooled or online. All women must be home now, so they're not out in the workforce because they have to be home with their kids. With the schools being closed, there's going to be no promotion of the LGBTQA, WXYZ, LMNOP agenda. Because if parents see that stuff coming across their kids' TV or a computer monitor and they're like, what? Turn this off. What in the world's going on here? Colleges were closed. Now, see, they're back open, but colleges were closed, and I said they might never open again. And one advantage of that is that it's basically the end of the snowflake culture because everybody's going to be online. And I guess, you can still be a snowflake online, but people are just going to ignore you. If you start, how do you ball into a chat window? You're like, wah, W-A-H, H-H-H, exclamation, exclamation. Maybe some emoji with tears coming out of the eyes. But nobody's going to pay attention to you if you throw a temper tantrum in a chat window or whatever.
Well, actually, if you have a freak out video, people really are interested in those because I think there were a few women that freaked out over Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so you have to check that out.
Okay.
But with the colleges, do we want to recap like the homeschool a little bit and just because I think with different schools being closed, what I noticed was that I think there are a few people, like I think I know one person who started homeschooling that didn't homeschool before. Homeschooling is going to be a great option here because they're not going to be disrupted by, kids being forced to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Like you're going to force a kindergartner to wear a mask.
Yeah.
But then a lot of this stuff's going online, and same with colleges. A lot of their classes are going online, and you're saying, okay, so why am I paying $15,000 a year to take just a few online classes when I can just watch YouTube and get about the same?
Khan Academy, Stanford and MIT have all those courses online. Like, why are you paying? The only reason you're paying for that is to get a degree which says, John the Son of Thunder is a certified psychotherapist. That's all that you're trying to get. But you can learn everything you need to know about psychotherapy. Okay, maybe that's extreme. Let's just say computer programming. You want to learn Python. You can learn everything you need to know on YouTube's and buy a book and work through the language.
Message boards.
Yeah.
You can look all your coding stuff up online, like psychology, gender studies. You don't like gender study. Well, it's a useless major in the first place, but you can read all that stuff just by, watching YouTube or
Getting
listening
a
to
subscription to the
politicians,
journal, reading the articles, buy a couple textbooks on Amazon.
listening to Father Martin.
But yeah, politicians and Father James Martin, FJ.
But I think you get what I'm like. You can understand what I'm saying here is that
Yeah.
this could be the end of higher education. Now the liberals, they had to have everyone come back. They had to have classes started because otherwise, why is the state funding their universities? Why are they paying their employees to sit at home?
They're between a rock and a hard place because some of these public schools have now shut down. Here in Pennsylvania, some of them have shut down and they went to virtual only. Some colleges, for instance, like UNC Chapel Hill, I think, and Notre Dame, they went to online only because they were worried because there was 200 sick kids or whatever. So they said, okay, no more in-person classes.
Which is pathetic because what percentage of the students is 200?
It's nothing,
It's less
and
than
they're
1%.
not even hardly sick. They have a cough, you know.
So okay, well, what's the next one here?
I said seminaries are closed and seminarians are now at home. Will they go back? ? Or be online forever?
Well, it depends which seminaries.
Yeah, I think the ones that I know of, the ones around here, they're all back and in person.
Yeah.
And I think the deal is, look, a seminary should be a sequestered environment. Apart from you on a Saturday or Sunday going out to dinner or having family visits, nobody's really coming or going. And so you don't even need to, you don't wear masks, there's no social distancing. It's just like living in a monastery with your brothers. So that seems to be not a problem. It seems like seminaries are back in business and normal.
Well, and I think that's probably how it should be. I know you had the idea that seminarians should have sort of I don't know what you call it, an apprenticeship or something at a parish.
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea a lot. And with the online classes, you could really facilitate that sort of spiritual growth and getting the hands-on experience of running a parish, managing a parish, and all that stuff.
Yeah, because you can do your Zooming, you can do those courses online, you can work in the parish, you can attend the Mass every day. You won't be able to sing the divine office with everybody else. I mean, that's one thing that you can't replicate. But I don't know, in these Novus Ordo seminaries, do they actually sing the office? I don't think they do. I think they're just reading the thing. And you can read the thing, privately in your chapel at your local parish. So I don't know. It does give you, the seminary in person would give you some discipline if you go to a good seminary where it's like you got to be up at this time, go to sleep at this time. Don't be playing video games. Get rid of that cell phone. If you're not there, they can't enforce any of that stuff. Yeah,
and the community would be a really good aspect as well if you have good, fellow seminarians just encouraging you and discussing the faith.
Encouraging, yeah.
Yeah. So the next one. What's the next one?
Well, I have a point that proves the bishops are useless, low-grade politicians who have no supernatural faith.
Yeah,
I mean that's why they proved us that point when they canceled the Mass and said you can't even go inside a church building to pray.
Well, speaking of politicians, I mean, how many of the bishops have basically said, like Bishop Stowe of Lexington, Kentucky said, well, the most important issue that you should consider is the environment. Okay, so are you a bishop for the Church of, Pachamama, or are you a Catholic bishop? I don't know. It's hard to tell right now. Cardinal Tobin encouraged people to vote for Biden.
Did Christ die to take away our sins or to save the environment? Tell me which one.
Well, I don't know. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I don't know. It depends on whose gospel you listen to. Is it the gospel of Cardinal Tobin and Pope Francis, or is it the gospel of the four evangelists and St. Paul? I don't know.
Well, and so the next point here, all priests can now celebrate the old Mass every day.
Yeah, and I don't know how many they had that opportunity. How many took advantage of that? I don't know. One thing that I did see was it seemed like a lot of these places that got the Mass shut down, they started streaming online. And on a lot of those online, it was like Novus Ordo, Mass facing the people, which I said is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. why are you doing a mass facing the people as a camera? But why are you like it's an act? It's like this show, okay?
Yeah.
This is a show. Me and him are like, this is a show. I mean, we're real people. We're saying real opinions here, but this is not real life. You know, you're holding a phone or watching this on a computer or whatever. And if I was going to say a mass or pray the breviary, I'm not going to like set up a camera and talk to the thing or whatever. I'm going to celebrate the mass. And so I just think it's ridiculous to have a virtual streaming mass facing the people. It has to be the stupidest thing I've ever seen. The point being that how many took advantage of that, I don't know.
Yeah, and you have another point here that ad orientem will become more popular. I don't know because I've been to one Novus Ordo since it reopened, and it was a virus mass.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone needed to wear their masks, and I think the priest really does need to watch the people at that point so that he can make sure that they're following the guidelines of wearing their mask.
Yeah.
But I don't know, and I think like with the old mass, if the priest had an interest in saying the old mass previously,
Yeah.
and you can see the numbers. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're putting up caution tape, you know, telling people like I had I heard someone said that they went into a local Novus Ordo parish and they weren't wearing a mask, and someone tapped them on the shoulder and said, "You need to wear your mask." And so you have the mask police now at these places, and people don't like. You can see the interest declining substantially in the Novus Ordo. And another point, and I don't know if that's going to be covered in the rest of these points, but I was saying, what about the youth? Like the ones that were on the fence.
Yeah.
A lot of them are probably on the fence here, like, well, I'm going to church, whatever. But all of a sudden, the bishop said, "Oh, don't go to mass." And now, and very few bishops have reinstated the obligation.
And even if they do, who's going to listen?
Yeah, and so now the youth are like, "Oh, well, mass is just optional." It's just like a Protestant thing where the Protestant youth, they say, "Oh, you know, I like the youth group because of the praise and worship and, you know, the events that they do and the snacks and everything." But the church service, well, I don't have to go because where two or more gathered in my name, you know, where two or more
Bible
gathered in my
study.
name.
We'll go to my Protestant youth group. We'll have a rock band. Vatican II said that we're all Christians anyway, and we should try to tear down things that divide us. And so, you know, I'm dispensed from the Sunday Mass obligation. So there. Maybe this will probably affect most teenagers, I think. Because even when I was a teen, you might find it hard to believe, ladies and gentlemen, but when I was a teenager, I did not like to go to Mass. Shocking as it may sound. But I think a lot of teenagers are going to use this argument, "Mom, I'm not going to Mass. I don't have to. It's too dangerous." The virus is a great excuse to stay in bed and not go to Mass.
Well,
I'm scared of the virus.
Well, and their bishop told them to live stream the Mass, and so they're like, "Well, why can't I just live stream this?
Stream it.
Well, a 20-minute Mass, and then we'll." And there are some out there, and I know my dad was looking for some.
He was looking for the shortest Novus Ordo, or even Latin Mass. You can find a 25-minute Latin Mass.
Yeah, and that's not to say anything against, like, that's not to say that my dad's a bad Catholic or anything, but, you know, and I like the shorter ones, too. I will say there were a few live streams where I selected the low masses. High masses. I'm guilty. Yeah. But one thing with this, like the numbers, is that the bishops and the priests, most of their congregations were like 50s and 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
And they told those people to stay home.
Yeah, that's who mostly goes this Novus Ordo, is these old people, the 60, 70, and 80-year-old people. And they are the ones who are staying home, and they're probably not coming back because they live in fear of this virus.
Well, and even if they don't, I mean, if your priest says, "Well, you need to stay home. You're 80 years old. It's too dangerous."
There goes.
What are you going to do?
The demographic of the Novus Ordo is just destroyed because all the lukewarms are gone. Your 80-year-old ladies. Now, there of course are. There are good exceptions. We've said this before. There's a lot of holy people that go to the Novus Ordo. They're praying the rosary. They're doing holy hours. They're attending Mass faithfully. and a lot of those are still coming. Maybe like half of them. I don't know. It's hard for me to judge because I'm only familiar with like 2 Novus Ordo parishes, and I don't go to that mass. I just talk to the priests who say the mass is there, and I think that some of these pious people are still coming. But anybody who had an excuse or was in some way a dissenter, wasn't really on board, they're at home and they're probably not coming back.
So moving on, was it priests maybe less willing to give hand communion?
Well, I thought that might be possible, but it doesn't seem that way because the bishops got all on board with this hand communion thing because, the virus.
Yeah, unfortunately that was wishful thinking.
Yeah.
And they'll focus on the sacrifice of the Mass and not
preaching and acting. Ars Celebrandi. Did that happen? No, because they put up a camera, and it's like the John the Son of Thunder program where it's pantomime. Da, 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 the Lord be with you.
You have to make sure you're doing your hand motions.
Everybody. And what do? Let us offer each other a sign of peace. Maybe there's a deacon who has a mask, and he's there with you, and you can go over and shake his hand after you've sanitized, of course. And then you do a handshake. Oh, yes. Maybe I can go over, maybe they'll go and kiss the camera. Just wave at everybody.
Do something stupid in front of the camera to let the viewers know that they didn't forget about their favorite part of the Mass, the sign of peace.
Everybody at home, yes.
I was hoping that they would get... Actually, well, I've heard that some of the Novus Ordos, the priest completely skips it, which I was like, more power to you.
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah. Like, so that's a good part, and it lets people know the sign of peace is optional, and so therefore you should never have it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's John the Son of Thunder's opinion, and probably a lot of the viewers as well. The next one, people will learn spiritual communion. Well, I did.
That did happen. When the Mass was shut down for however long it was in your locale, people were making spiritual communions, and that happened. But that happened with the people who continued to care. The people who actually wanted to be at the Mass, the people who watched the live stream so they could pray. We're not talking about the people who were like, boy, I'm so glad I don't have to go to Mass, I can sleep in. Those people didn't do anything. Of course, they were probably making bad Holy Communions to begin with. So, did they learn anything? No, but I think pious people had a deeper appreciation for the Holy Communion.
So the next point is the priests will learn Holy Communion outside of Mass.
And that did happen.
A little bit.
A little bit it did happen. In some places in the Novus Ordo, and even in the Latin Mass, the old Mass, they were telling people, okay, we're not going to distribute communion at this Mass. I don't know why. It's like somehow if they do it at the end, the virus is less dangerous or whatever.
Well, I think there was like restrictions from some dioceses where they said communion in the hand only, and so that's how the Latin Mass people got around it, because they said, we're not distributing communion at Mass.
Yeah.
If you want to come to communion outside of Mass,
that's
directly after.
It's smart. That was a smart thing to do. But a lot of places were doing that in the Novus, and I have no idea why.
The next point is people will learn the value of the sacrifice of Mass.
Because they were watching, they weren't able to receive communion, and they were just praying the Mass, and maybe even on TV, on live streams.
I think that's the case. For me personally, I don't think I ever necessarily took the Latin Mass for granted, but whenever we didn't have any Mass at all, it really puts things into perspective, like, wow, this is the first time in who knows how many thousands of years, really, that we didn't have an opportunity to attend Mass. And you can really see, not that we were being persecuted, but you can see what the persecuted Christians are up against. And so I think a lot of people, like the ones that were faithful, they really did use it as an opportunity to make sure that they're not taking the Mass for granted. And I know even today, I was not on my A game. I don't know if you guys can tell or not, but even at Latin Mass, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do my best, and God's, hopefully God will appreciate what I can, he'll
Some
appreciate
days
my
you're
best.
like that, yeah.
So, but, I mean, if I woke up at my house and didn't have a Mass to go to, then I wouldn't even have that problem to begin with.
Yeah.
So, the next point is bad priests may retire, quit.
Get a mistress. Some have retired. That happened in our diocese. 2 guys just said, I've had it, and they retired. I don't know anybody that's quit. Get a mistress? Maybe? I don't know. But I can tell you that from what I heard from a novice family that I'm close with, they said that their priest is starting to get... Some of these priests are starting to lose it. They're getting really agitated by anti-mask people, by communion on the tongue people, and they're starting to rage. And I'm thinking that we might have some rage quits of some of these liberal priests, because if the people are able, if you have a reasonable bishop who knows that, like, you're allowed to receive communion on the tongue, and you force that issue, then you force this liberal priest to give you communion on the tongue, and then they're having their psychological breakdowns, or they're possessed by the devil, and it's just making them shake and have manifestations of the demon that's coming out. So that, I think, has only just now begun.
I actually kind of saw a little bit of the opposite, where these priests are in their glory because
they don't have to do anything
because they get to mess with the Mass even more now. Like, let me tape off these pews, and let me put tape on the floor so you can social distance, and here's some hand sanitizer for everyone.
Everybody gets a Purell.
Yeah, we're gonna have holy hand sanitizer instead of holy water at the front, and everyone gets to wear a mask, and we get to be pro-life because we wear a mask, and that makes you pro-life. I don't know. I see some of the wacko out there priests in their glory with this.
I say thank God you see more of these wackos than I do. I try to avoid all the craziness.
I haven't seen a whole lot, but I think you're right though. There are priests that are kind of going crazy. I mean, I saw the one sermon that was live streamed on Easter of the priest just dancing for his homily right in front of him. Spoiler alert, that's on a parody video coming up. Or maybe release at this time. Who knows?
Who knows, yeah.
Okay, what's the next point?
Laity can learn the office, which some have. I mean, I know in my little apostolate, in my little sphere of influence, I encouraged that. And so when we came back to live masses, we have recently begun to sing the divine office before and after our low masses, because it gives our choir something to do. So that's been a plus. I don't know how other parishes have done that, but it's an opportunity.
For sure. The next point is that sports were temporarily canceled. And families have more time to spend with each other. And I think, from my experience, I really don't care about some of the sports just because they're all about making political statements.
It's all
now.
Black Lives Matter.
NFL,
now.
NBA, MLB, they're all, and even I'm a big fan of golf. And there's a little bit of propaganda in there with some of the commercials and some of the segments that they do. So it's kind of annoying, actually. I think there will be a decent number of people that give up sports, like watching sports.
I can tell
altogether.
you that the NFL started last week, the Thursday night game, and then the Steelers played Sunday. And at work on Monday, I talked to 4 guys who were formerly big Steeler fans, NFL fans. We talk about play fantasy football. Not one of these 4 guys watched a stitch of NFL football that weekend.
I forgot.
Yeah, they didn't watch the Steelers because they said as soon as baseball went back and the first thing they were doing was kneeling and writing Black Lives Matter on the field, it was like, that's it. This is no longer about sports. This is just your dose of propaganda. And everybody's wise to it. That's 4 guys who were formerly NFL consumers who have said, I'm done. And that's a small number of people. Like, these people are just guys I work with. They're not rad-trad Catholics. They're just normal Joes who are fed up with this thing. So it is definitely a case. Professional sports are done. I think youth sports are still fine. You know, they've come back and they're playing.
Yeah, as long as their parents can show up for the games.
Yeah, depending on where you live, you got that thing. The thing that's stupid is here in Pennsylvania, they say like, well, PIAA, nobody can show up to a game, but if you play youth football, you can have a full stadium, you know, and nobody's wearing a mask because it's stupid. But if it's PIAA, you know, the state-sanctioned athletics, whatever. You missed one thing here, which was will Parish's diocese fail? Right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good question, and it's starting to happen. Some dioceses are filing for the bankruptcy.
There's there's terrible financial situations. I don't know what's going to happen, but if you don't like, what the bishops did was they said, well, we're gonna lock you out of churches, but make sure to give to our Lenten appeal. And you can donate online, and we'll send you a letter to remind you.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what are you really gonna expect to receive any donations?
Why do I want to give you money? You won't even, like some dioceses, like Tomato Soup, which is in Chicago, you can't even do a baptism. You can't do anything. Not a wedding, not a marriage, nothing. Basically, the priest should just go on vacation to the Caribbean because you have nothing to do. You can't even visit a sick person. But yet they still want money for what?
And actually, I'm surprised that not every diocese has already declared bankruptcy. Just wait until the fiscal year end.
Yeah, I'm surprised. How are they keeping this thing going when they have nobody at these Novus Ordos and they never gave any money to begin with? So, I can tell you how. I know in particular one pastor in my diocese made mention that they've gotten a lot of Trump bucks because
oh yes, the loans,
the loan money and the free money that Trump just opened up the faucets as part of this relief Corona thing, and so the USCCB and the dioceses have got tons of money.
Well, that would explain why the dioceses and the parishes were not very eager to open back up.
Correct. They wanted to comply with whatever the government said because there was dollar signs behind it.
That explains a lot.
Yep.
The next one is restaurants are closed, so families have to actually eat dinner together.
Yes, and that worked. I mean, that happened. It worked really well. Now restaurants are open, and but they're limited capacity at like 25% and the 6-foot social distancing and all this thing. So it is a hassle. It still remains the case that families are eating dinner together, and that's a good thing. And hopefully that continues even once these restaurants opened up again.
Now, what's the next point here?
Usurious earnings and gains are ruined. And this was based on the idea that with all the businesses being closed down, that nobody would be able to pay their loans. And you saw that they enacted a prohibition on evicting people from rental properties, rental real estate. Commercials, they've given them Trump bucks so you can continue to stay. You know, they're just giving you free money to pay your rent so you don't get evicted. But we're not there yet, but we're getting to the point where there could be economic issues here. With the sense that, I mean, look at treasury rates, they're next to nothing. I'm not making any money on T-bills or savings accounts or anything like that. You're not even keeping up with inflation. People are still borrowing money like crazy to buy houses. In my town, real estate, and many other towns, real estate prices continue to rise. People are taking the money that they would have spent on a vacation and they're putting it in their house with home improvements and whatnot. So this one remains to be seen whether this economy is going to go down the toilet, because it's being kept alive now by the Trump bucks. That he's printing money, the Fed's just printing money to keep an economic downturn from happening.
Well, there's certainly going to be a major shift. I mean, I don't think anyone questioned that in economics, in terms of like vacations and just really the whole setup of where people decide to live. And maybe they'll be more conscious about, you know, which states have lower tax rates. And
that's happening. Look at Tim Gordon, who left California, and Dave Gordon. I just saw show title. I didn't watch it. Ben Shapiro said he's leaving California.
Oh, good for him.
Get out, move to South Dakota, Montana,
Texas.
Alaska, Texas. New Hampshire has no sales tax as well, and it's in the Northeast. So yeah, there's a shift there.
And the final point is that America may collapse and break up, and I don't think we've seen the full extent of that yet. But by the time the show comes out, we will have maybe a month and a half or so before things get really crazy.
Before the election.
Yeah, because with the election, I don't know what you expect, but I expect some large-scale riots.
Yes, this thing, I never thought that this would be the one that would come the most true. America may collapse and break up. But with these orchestrated riots, the race riots, you have this severe division in the United States of America. You have Antifa out there, people shooting each other, beating each other, just doing random killings. Politicians are under threat. Churches are being smashed up and desecrated. And look, we're a month and a half before this election, 2 months, whatever it is, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died. There's a danger. There is no way that this election is not going to be severely disputed, with violent fights in the streets over voting in elections, over judicial decisions whether to count or not count ballots, because you're going to have all this mail-in voting. It's so ripe for fraud. Nobody is going to be happy with this election. The New York Times has already guaranteed us, or maybe it was the Washington Post, guaranteed us that there would be violence leading up and after this election, because they said it's clear that Donald Trump's going to be the winner on election night, because the Republicans are actually going to go vote because they don't believe in the virus. They're going to vote in person, and they'll have this slow trickle of the mail-in Joe Biden ballots, and they'll just mail in as many as they need to get Joe Biden to win. And then it'll be, will there be courts? Who's going to put up with this stuff? So now you only have 8 Supreme Court justices. They could be tied 4-4. That's why I've been saying we're going to have the military's going to have to take control of this country. We'll have General Franco of the United States Army will have to rule this country, and he can smash the communists and restore some sort of order, because it's a mess. California, Oregon, Washington may secede if Trump wins.
It wouldn't be a bad thing, except I'd like to visit some of their national parks.
Well, they don't believe in borders, so you'll just be able to walk right in.
Good. Getting back, it might be a little bit tricky, but get my passport.
You have
right?
a passport.
I have a passport.
You might have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah, once I cross the border, because visiting those mountains it exposes me to so much of a virus. Yeah. Well, in closing, I mean, it looks like we had pretty good predictions. I think you actually had you were more on top of things than I was, because I wasn't sure how things were going to play out, but some of your predictions are really accurate.
Yeah, the funny thing was I thought I expected more from diocesan priests, and I got less. And then as far as what happened with the schools and the colleges, that was about what I expected. The sports, the restaurants, what I expected. The economy thing has been propped up by the printing press, and America may collapse. Tune in to this YouTube to find out.
TBD.
TBD. You'll be watching all the fires burning in the streets as they happen.
All right, and we are the laity. We will not be silent. Don't stand by silent as our churches burn. Make sure to make your voice be heard. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.
Peace.